Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Necessary Evil, written by Glacial Fury. There is a darkness that lurks within us all, a swirling madness that dwells within the twilight recesses of our subconscious mind. For most, this darkness never stirs, but sometimes something horrific happens that fractures our mind, and the darkness cracks open its eyes and rises to the fore. Seamus lit a smoke and watched the silky coils rise and twist towards the ceiling. The Iron Maiden, a dive bar out in the Barrens, surged with rowdy gangers this evening, more so than usual. He quaffed a shot of vodka, one of half a dozen lined up on the bar in front of him, and ran a careful eye over the swelling crowd of drunks. Actually, now that he thought about it, the Iron Maiden stayed pretty busy all of the time, especially after dusk when all of the miscreants came out to play. Their mugs crashed together, foamy beer sloshing all about. They raised their fists to the ceiling and roared with delight, capering in a circle before smashing them together again. A few of them hopped up on the tables and raised their glasses high, belting out the slurred lyrics to No Good Badges before tumbling back to the beer-stained floor. They were loud, obnoxious, even wasteful, but they were relatively harmless, and they were having a good time. Seamus also recognized a few of them from the time he spent here at the Maiden, regulars that frequented the establishment for its cheap booze and quality stacks, amongst other things. The rest were just blurred sketches passing in the night. Some were vacant-eyed tweakers, addicts hooked on the stacks peddled by local dealers from the bars and stack shops here in the Barrens. Look hard enough, and one could find just about anything they might desire out here, for the right price. The recent influx to the Barrens came as no surprise to Seamus. The Badgers were no longer patrolling the Barrens. No more rules out here, no law. Just organized chaos and survival of the fittest. Seamus took a drag on his smoke and laughed. The Badgers never gave a crap about what goes on out here anyway. He thought with disgust and laughed again. Nobody does. Hell, half of the drug cartels from the cities to the Barrens were supplied by the Badgers. They fancied themselves kings of the Barrens, but were nothing more than gangsters with badges as far as Seamus was concerned. No better. No better at all, he mumbled aloud, slowly running his finger around the gold-plated rim of an empty shot glass. Fact is, he laughed bitterly, they're just as bad. Seamus glanced over his shoulder at the mob of tattooed gangers and tweakers grinding in the bar's smoky gloom and shook his head. No, he decided after a moment, the Badgers were worse. Corrupt, dangerous men who sold their souls to greed and treachery, abused the power the people entrusted them with for personal gain, while turning their backs on the oaths they swore, and the innocents they were there to protect. And for what? More credits? They were the most despicable kind of human beings in the eyes of Seamus. He frowned at his hands, clenched into fists, so tight that his wrists began to ache. He blinked again, and consciously relaxed his trembling hand. As bad as the Badgers were, they didn't discount the fact that the gangers and stackers were the dregs of society, weak parasites. Their feeble minds were unable to cope with the realities of life, so they turned to stacks for an escape. There was something darker out there, a shadow stalking the night. Seamus laughed and drained another shot. All of these arseholes would probably end up drooling stack-induced coma anyway. Their emaciated frames too weak to fight off the razor doc who scoops them up and carts them off to be parted out. Their miserable existence would end on a cold metal slab, soaked in their own urine as the chopped doc dug for their organs. A cruel fate for sure, but one they earned all by themselves. Seamus shifted his gaze to the lasers and flashing lights of the dance floor and squinted against the glare. The crowd had begun feverishly grinding and thrusting and sweating all over each other. an obscene display of chemically driven irreverence. They didn't care who witnessed their writhing and twisting and moaning under the soft neon glow. They didn't care about anything at all, except their next stack. Something he would never understand. Seamus mentally waved this aside. He was here for something far more critical than personal gratification. Something that couldn't be bought with a cred stick. He remembered when it first came over him. The night he opened his eyes, and a strange sort of temporary madness had taken a hold and driven him to seek a darker side of the sprawl. And when he found it, he knew what had to be done. He knew his purpose. "How are we doing over there?" A gruff voice cut into his dark music, shrieking sped metal hammering out of the club's sound system. Seamus regarded the owner of the voice, a grizzled old man named Skylar, with the gleaming cybernetic arm resting on the other side of the bar, staring at him, with one eye not covered with a blood-stained patch. "Another round," Seamus answered, his impatient stare with a quick gesture of the empty shot glasses. "Fill 'em all." Old man Skylar grunted, his single eye glittering in the bar's recessed lighting, then nodded and reached for the vodka. Seamus took a drag of his smoke and used the mirror behind the old man Skylar to keep track of his target. Aaron Gareth, a corporate slug by day, depraved serial killer by night, lounged in a private booth from where Seamus sat hunched at the bar. Tonight, he sat across from an attractive, dark-skinned femme, wearing painted-on synth leather shorts and a pinkish, semi-translucent razor shirt that strained against the augmented breasts. She twisted a finger in her curly hair shyly, and her scarlet lips ghosted a smile that gleamed brightly. She was his next victim. A bottle clunked heavily on the bar in front of Seamus, and the soft glug of vodka filling his shot glasses followed. He shook his head, downed another shot. "Feck it," he thought, and turned his attention back to the dance floor, fired up another cigarette, and blew a stream of smoke at the ceiling. Aaron Gareth would make his move soon. Patience was crucial for Seamus. He drained another shot and slammed the glass down on the bar with a hiss. He was reaching for another when Aaron Gareth abruptly stood up, tossed a cred stick on the table, and offered his arm to Miss Mohawk, and hurriedly led her out of the bar. Seamus felt his pulse quicken. It was time. He waited a moment before sliding off his stool to follow. Heavy rain pounded into the asphalt with unmatched fury, and his breath came in thick jets of steam that fountained from his nose and mouth. Lightning flashed bright enough to sting his eyes, and the crash of thunder that followed rattled his teeth. The night was cold, dark, miserable. Visibility was low, just a few feet. The only source of light, a flickering neon sign bolted to the bar's metal roof. Seamus watched Aaron Gareth and his date disappear around a corner at the end of the block and followed. Lightning flared again, burning all color out of the sky. The rain further intensified, pounding through his jacket and shirt, causing the already uncomfortable armor weave to cling to his shoulders and back. But he was too focused on Aaron Gareth, who climbed into his import and sped off, to notice. Seamus splashed over his car and followed them into the night. The serial killer led Seamus on a tour through sprawling industrial districts and smaller, well-kept residential neighborhoods before crossing over to a superhighway and turning into a recently finished superplex catering to the well-to-do, where he stopped next to an armored guard shack. He briefly spoke with one of the guards, who threw his head back and laughed, clapping Aaron Gareth on the shoulder. A moment later, the gate swung open, and the red glow of Gareth's taillights disappeared into the superplex. Seamus put on his best cop face and pulled around the guard shack to work his magic. A short, stocky security guard, wearing body armor and tactical pants, regarded him curiously. "Can I help you, sir?" the guard asked with a calm indifference, clearly uncertain of what level of respect Seamus deserved. "This is a gated community, and I see that you do not have a guest pass on your windshield, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to turn around and leave." Seamus gripped his Predator 4 auto pistol behind the car door where the guard couldn't see it, and flashed a golden badge that gleamed in the guard shack's floodlights. The guard's eyebrows rose slightly. "My apologies, sir," he stammered with surprise. "I wasn't expecting a marshal this evening." Seamus allowed himself a ghost of a smile. "Not a problem," he replied to the guard, glancing at his nameplate. "Officer Dietz." Officer Dietz puffed up his chest slightly when he heard those words. Officer was a title generally reserved for the real badges. Wannabes, Seamus hid his disgust behind a friendly mask. They were all the same, easily manipulated. "I do apologize, Marshal Thomas," Officer Dietz spawned all over Seamus, mushing his thumb down on the gate control button. "Enjoy your visit." Wow, Seamus thought. A little ego boost, a borrowed badge, and he was walking right in. No muss, no fuss. Thanks, Hal. Seamus glanced up at the soaring superplex towers, piercing the stormy sky, as he walked towards the building's entrance. Chains of lightning crackled around their distant antennas, like some Tesla experiment gone wrong. The resident directory pointed him to the 5th floor. Convenient. Seamus made his way over to the elevator lobby and whistled softly while he waited. During the ride up, his anticipation heightened. Adrenaline scorched his veins. His pistol was light in his grip. The elevator door slid silently open, and Seamus stepped into the long corridor covered with a deep red carpet. Blood red, he thought grimly, and a series of polished wood doors that ran the length of the hallway. Old-school doorknobs glinted silver in the overhead light. Seamus followed the glowing numbers stamped onto each door's surface all the way to Aaron Garrett's apartment. The muffled sounds of a struggle emanated from inside. Modern technology was so marvelous. Why bother with a bunch of city keys when you could just tap a maglock passkey on a door and proof click instant access? Indeed, how wonderful for Seamus, who had just happened to have in his possession a level 5 maglock passkey. Brilliant. He waved the magstick over the door's security plate, and the glowing light flicked from red to green with a soft click, and Seamus was inside. Once inside, he saw signs of a struggle. Tables overturned, pictures crooked on the walls, shattered glass strewn about on the floor, and by the sounds coming from the back of the apartment, Mohawk was still putting up one hell of a fight. Seamus crept through the apartment, pistol held low in a tactical grip, stepping over a trail of debris and overturned furniture. Several muffled thumps, followed by the sound of a body hitting the floor, echoed from the back room. He edged up to the bedroom door, which was still slightly cracked, and heard a strangled cry from the other side. He eased the door open with his pistol and saw Aaron Garrett straddling the now blue-faced Miss Mohawk, whom he'd pinned to the floor with a rope wrapped tightly around her neck. Seamus didn't say a word, just kicked the son of a bitch in the teeth. Aaron Garrett grunted and released his hold on the cable and fell backwards, stunned. Never taking his eyes from Gareth, Seamus sunk down beside the woman and freed her from the deadly cable. "Who the feck are you?" Aaron Gareth demanded, his bloody face twisted into a hideous mask of rage. He clearly didn't appreciate being interrupted. "I'm gonna feckin' kill you! Do you know who I am?" Seamus shot him in the dick. Aaron Gareth howled in agony and vomited down his shirt, clutching at his ruined groin. That was the first time Seamus had shot someone in the groin. The reaction was immensely gratifying. "I'm the one who hunts the hunters," Seamus snarled, glancing over at the woman who had partially recovered and was staring at him wide-eyed. "You've been doing this for a long time, Aaron Gareth. But that time is over." "I paid my debt to society," Aaron Gareth gasped, ragged through his waves of agony. Blood calls from between his fingers. "Who are you to judge me?" Seamus shrugged and glanced back at the woman, her face ashen. "You have nothing to fear from me." Seamus moved to the side of the bed where Aaron Gareth lay clutching at his groin, and frowned down at him for a long moment, never saying a word, just staring. Finally, he sat down on the bed. "I am their vengeance." His voice was low and ominous, like a rumbling of a distant storm. He stared at his pistol in much the same manner one would regard a loved one. "The ones you left in shallow graves with the ropes you used to strangle them. still wrapped around their necks. Aaron Gareth blinked at Seamus, then laughed, a harsh, dry rattle.
You mean you did all of this for a bunch of fucking dead wars?
She screeched at Seamus.
You are nothing. No one misses them. No one cares. I did the world a favor.
Seamus snarled and shot him in both knees. Aaron Gareth screamed like no one Seamus had never heard before. The sound was absolutely appalling. He was considering battering the man into unconsciousness when he abruptly fainted. I am the vengeance, he continued after a moment, nudging Aaron Gareth awake with his boot. The gods forgave you. I didn't. Aaron Gareth's head lolled about uncontrollably, while foamy saliva dripped from his chin. I find you guilty, Aaron Gareth, Seamus said, his lips drawing back from his teeth. Guilty of assault, torture, and murder. Aaron Gareth's eyes fluttered open, and he summoned the strength to spit at Seamus.
Fuck you,
he rasped with an evil grin, his face stark white.
They are mine. I own them.
His ghostly face laughed maniacally.
They are mine forever.
Seamus stood up. No, he replied. You don't. And a smoking hole appeared between the serial killer's eyes. The thundering gunshot spread a grotesque fountain of blood and brains across the wall behind Aaron Gareth, and his eyes rolled up into his head.
Are you going to kill me?
A terrified voice quavered from across the room. Seamus blinked as if emerging from a fevered dream and turned towards the voice. I told you, he replied, turning to leave. You have nothing to fear from me. The woman sobbed uncontrollably.
You're an angel.
Seamus stopped abruptly. No, he said over his shoulder, from where he stood in the doorway. My daughter was the angel. Tears welled up in his eyes. I am the devil. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.